Welcome to the video. In this video we're going to be taking a look at this product here. This is the FPV-X230 from DYS. So I need to say a very big thank you to those guys for sending us this to try. We've already looked at a couple of products from DYS in the past. The last one that we looked at, you might remember, was this little thing here. This was the X160, a little all-in-one FPV quadcopter, and this has been a ton of fun. If you remember, we even put the little legs on it and had some flying around. Now this is a slightly bigger model and one that we're looking at because we've had a number of requests from subscribers that are interested in the ready to fly quads. For those of you that aren't interested in learning Arduino or playing with graphical user interfaces or learning how to do things with a soldering iron, this is the kind of stuff that is available for you. The idea with this, as you can see from the outside, is that it's an FPV all-in-one piece of equipment. It also comes with a radio, so in theory we have everything in this box in order to fly. So in this video what we'll do is we'll take a look at what's inside the box, then we'll go through the individual specs, talk about charging the batteries and getting ready to fly, putting the propellers on, and then we'll take it for a little spin. We will test it with Fat Shark goggles and other things too, and we'll also show you a neat little trick on the radio too. So the first thing we'll do then is let's just open this box up and we'll spin it round and I'll show you what comes inside. So as we open the box, I've had to get the camera as high as it can go here to fit everything in, because this is a much larger box than the ones we normally play with. We get a user manual for the X230 that talks about setting it up and all the different bits and pieces that you get. We get a bit of protective foam, and then we get the model and radio itself. Now the first thing we'll do is talk about the radio. I do like this, it looks like some kind of electric bunny. You have the two ears here, one of which is for the radio and the other one is for the FPV stuff. If I've got the battery in here, and if we power it up, you'll see that not only do we have some lights at the bottom that's showing us the charge level, but it also has settings here for things like the channel for FPV. So the really cool thing on here is that we can actually get a video out and DC out on the back of the radio. So it's very cheap and cheerful if you want to connect a set of goggles, things like the quantum goggles that we've seen in other places, or a simple screen that you could even mount here at the front. It's all included. So we don't have an FPV screen with it, but it's a piece of cake to add one to the kit. The other things that we get then, we get a battery for the actual model itself. You just press and hold the back for 2 seconds and it shows you the charge status. There we go, so we can see that this is fully charged. I've charged this ready to go. It is a LiPo pack, but it's come in this kind of setting here, so you can actually slide it in the back of the model. We have some spare bits, so we have the props front and back, we have the prop guards, and we also have the cable that you need to charge all the batteries along with the nuts, and we have the other set of props as well. And then the other things that we've got in here, we have the charger that we can use to charge not only the battery that goes in the transmitter that comes in it, again it's a LiPo battery, but also this battery pack. Now it's clear here that there are different versions of this kit, or it was designed to have more than one battery, but if you're going to buy something like this, it's always better to have more than one battery, because you tend to find that they run out pretty quickly and you spend most of the time waiting for things to charge. Last thing then is there's a connector to actually charge and plug this thing into the wall. It is a very standard kind of 2-pin connection, so if you've got one of those already, which I have always plugged in the wall, it's great. And then we actually have the model itself. So let me just move the box out the way and let's zoom in and we can have a quick look at this model, and I'll show you some of the key features. Now some people have been referring to this X230 as a racer. I don't think it's a racer at all. I wouldn't class it as a racer, but let's zoom in and we'll talk about the individual pieces of it in a little bit more detail. So the first thing you notice when you get it out of the package is that the kind of body is all made of this plastic stuff, which is one of the reasons why I would say I don't think this is a racing quad. A couple of reasons really. One, it is reasonably heavy because it's quite well constructed, and also these arms are all kind of one piece, so if you did unfortunately have a little bit of a hiccup and slammed into something at speed, then there's a chance unfortunately you might actually snap the arms, which means then you're replacing the entire enclosure, because the top and bottom pieces, if you snapped an arm, would both have to be replaced. However, that being said, you can see that there's a very big slot in the back, which is where the battery goes in. So it's very similar to some other products out there, where rather than use normal LiPos, we actually plug it in as and you can also have that kind of indication at the back. We also have a connection to the flight controller, a little USB connector at the back if you really wanted to play with it. Then around the side we have an SD micro slot. You can actually record online, and you can also connect to the camera and kind of get those files off as well via this separate USB connector. Little reset for the camera. At the front then, it does have an inbuilt camera as part of the quad, and it has a really cute feature. I'm not sure if you can hear the servo moving, but you can control the attitude of the camera by a little slider on the back of the radio. So as you're flying about, this little slider that we'll look at in a minute actually controls the pitch of the camera. A lovely idea, and it is kind of underneath your finger when you're flying, or if you're a pincher rather than someone like me that flies with the thumb end of the stick, then you can catch it with one of your other hands. For me, this is a little bit loose. It will be easy to catch it in flight and to become confusing. I might see if we can tighten that up just a little bit so that once we've set it, it'll stay in position and it'll be hard for me to knock accidentally. Other features then here on the model itself is, again, we have a similar display to the one that we had on the transmitter, so we can choose any one of the 32 channels and we can change it, both the band and the channel it's working on. And then we actually have a FPV transmitter here at the back. Now it's interesting, this appears to be circular polarized, but the receivers on the Electric Rabbit seems to be straight. However, in the testing that I've done with it so far, the reception is pretty good, so I'm not too worried about taking it out in the field and trying slightly further away. This should easily kind of get you towards the edge of legal limits in places like the UK. Other key features, we have nice mounts for the motors that also show you which way they're going to be turning. That's going to help put the props on properly. And then underneath we have the couple of aerials for the radio, and we also have LEDs under each of the arms for orientation too. So in theory, this should be everything that we need to get cracking. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to install the props, making sure that the props are installed the right way round for each of the motors, following the little icons in each of the corners, and then what we'll actually do is we'll take it out and see if we can fly it. So one of the things I think we need to test here is whether or not this thing is ready to fly once you have both of the batteries charged, because this is what people who are buying it are going to be interested in. They're not buying this to then spend 45 minutes playing with a graphical user interface or a multi-week code or something like CleanFlight. This is something that they just want to get out there and have a go with. However, saying that, you do just need to make sure that everything is rotating and working properly and that the quad is all okay, and obviously you need to charge the batteries. So let's talk about that next and what you need to do to get that charged. Then obviously you slide the battery at home in the back of the model itself, and then there's another LiPo battery that fits under the back of the radio. So let me grab the battery charger and just talk about how you do that. The connection up to the battery charger is pretty straightforward. All you do is make sure that this is plugged into the mains, and then we have two balance tap connectors for the batteries that you plug them into there, and then you just kind of press the button underneath where it says LiPo and you're good to go. Now obviously, to charge the battery that's in the back of the radio, this is the one that actually comes, that you pop in the back of that radio that I've christened the Electric Rabbit. It's very straightforward because we have the JST connector that plugs into the radio, and we have a balance tap, and that balance tap plugs into that port, and then you charge it and wait for the constant light here where it says LiPo, and this is ready to go. Slightly more interesting when you get to the flight battery. Now this is one of the things that I do find a little bit interesting with these kind of pre-built models, is they do mean that you have to buy the same batteries and plug them in. Now you'll notice on the side here there is actually a little connector that looks almost identical to the one that's on the side of the charger, and that's what the cable's for that comes as part of this kit. So to charge the flight battery, what you need to do is plug this cable into the port on the charger, and then you need to plug the other end into the actual LiPo itself, the flight battery, to charge it. Hit the same button again and you're good to go. So just be aware of that. It'll take a little bit of time to charge both batteries, but make sure you've gone through the full cycle. Obviously, if you already have some kind of LiPo battery charger, then you can use both of these, but be aware that most of the other LiPo battery chargers out there, the professional types, also want to have a connection to the other power out of the packs too. But it's nice that they actually give you a charger as part of the kit. It does mean that you are ready to fly and you do get everything in the box. The only other thing then that we need to talk about before we actually get ready to take this out to the field and show you what it's like to fly is to talk about the setup for the radio. The manual itself is very good at explaining the majority of the things on the receiver. So obviously we have the power button, we have the channel change button. If you press and hold it, it changes the band for the FPV reception. If you press it briefly, it changes the channel. And then on the top we have a number of controls. So we have the 3 position switches that control the flight modes. We have a start, stop, record button, a photo button so you can take a snapshot. We have kind of the mode button for the camera and a playback button as well. The stuff that isn't as well documented in the manual that it's worthwhile talking about are those 2 ports that we looked at before. On the back here we have 2 ports, one for DC 12 volts out and the other for AV out as well. Now this means that we can connect something like cheap and cheerful goggles or a little 7-inch screen that we could mount at this front position and both power it and get our AV out as well. I had a long conversation over email with DYS to try and get the information about how these ports actually work, and in the end I actually took this little piece off to kind of trace everything and make sure I understood how it worked. So let me share what I figured out with you on a slide. So the 12 volt power out, which is the middle piece, actually has 12 volts. It does give 12 volts out, it's exactly right. The outside of the connector needs to be a 3.5mm jack style with a hollow center. The outside of it is ground, the inside is 12 volts. Sadly, they don't provide cables for these 2 ports, which I think they should do because it would make all the wiring up an awful lot easier and less hassle. And then the AV out, we have a 3.5mm stereo jack. The video connection is in the middle and the ground is at the top. Now I've actually connected my Quantum goggles to this and it works really well. I wouldn't push it for an awful lot of flight because this electric rabbit, I can't see any circular polarized antennas, even though the one on the model appears to be. So now we've talked about that, let's talk about how we're going to power everything on. Let's just test it's all going to work. If it does, then we can put the props on the model, take it out to the back garden or the field and try for a test hover. Now to turn everything on is pretty straightforward. The thing that you have to do is to press and hold the power button on the receiver, power that up first. There we go, we are F1, so that should be the default band for things like Fat Shark goggles. We can see you have all the lights up so the battery is nice and charged, so that part's ready. To power up the actual model itself is a little bit more complicated. It does actually say on the battery what the instructions are. So to turn it on, you press the button once and then press and hold for 2 seconds. So we press the button once, then we press and hold it for 2 seconds. And when we let go, there we are ready to rock and roll. Now at the back we have the indicator, shows how much charge is left, which is nice. There are those LEDs underneath. We have green at the front and red at the back. There are a display on the top which shows us that we are an F1 as well for the receiver, so we'll be getting FPV, and there's lots of other lights as well, so it is very pretty. Now to actually arm the copter and get ready to fly, what we have to do is hold the throttle stick at its lowest position over to the right hand side, and now we should be in business. And there we are. All the motors are spinning. Now to disarm it, then we do the same thing, throttle at lowest position over to the left hand side, and now it's safe, and now the throttle is disabled. So very similar to a lot of the other flight controllers that we're using. So this is the point now where it's worthwhile putting on the blades, making sure that you've done them the right way round. Take note of these little indicators in the corners, and you're ready to go out and have a fly. Now the only thing I will do here is turn the model off, and again, to turn it off, you press it once, then press and hold for 2 seconds. So we press it once, press and hold for 2 seconds, 1, 2, take our finger off, and there we go, it's gone to sleep. Turn this off, press and hold, that's off too. So now it's all safe. So props, and then let's go and give it a test hover and see what it actually feels like flying. So here's the very first hover of this in the back garden. We haven't set anything or changed anything, we've just put the props on, and it's absolutely lovely. It's very soft and responsive on the throttle, hovering about 50% throttle, which is exactly where it should be, but it's really nice and responsive. The turn rates are good. We've got it in kind of an auto level mode here just for pootling around the back garden. But it's doing really nicely. It's very easy to see which way it's pointing because of the different colours on it, and I imagine at night with all the different lights it's going to be fun too. So this is one that I would recommend for a second quadcopter, and we'll talk about that in a minute about learning to fly. This is going to be a kit that will be tempting for those pilots that want to get into quadcopters, and because it comes with all the pieces you need, look to invest in one. However, what I would say is that this is going to be a little bit of a handful. First of all, I'd recommend that you get yourself one of the smaller indoor quadcopters, have a go with that first, and then once you've got to grips with that, this, for those pilots that are interested in building their own, is a viable option. So now we've had a look and a bit of a play, and we've kind of seen this thing flying or hovering around, let's go back onto the bench and I'll give you my final thoughts before we finish the video. So there's a number of things that are worthy of praise on this model. It does come with absolutely everything in the kit that's ready to fly. You get the radio, you get the batteries for it, you also get the batteries for the actual drone itself, you get all the props with spares, you can get spares of the prop spinners, you get the LiPo battery, so everything that you need in the box is there from day one. The nice thing as well is that they've really thought about all of the FPV kit too. So we have all the FPV kit already installed in here. The camera's a reasonable quality. The idea of a remotely controlled gimbal is a cute one. And with the addition of a simple screen or a basic set of goggles without a receiver, you can plug it into the 12 volts and video out on the radio itself, and you can also try FPV too. This, when you're very close up to it, to me looks a little bit like a toy. It doesn't fly or behave like one. It's a great little model, and there are other people and other pilots that I know that absolutely love the look of this. I think it looks really cute and couldn't wait to get their hands on it to give it a try and fly it themselves. The other consideration, of course, is that because this is a very specific drone, then all of the spares are going to be things that you're going to have to buy that are exactly for this model. So if you break an arm, as we talked about, you are going to have to replace the top and bottom parts if it snaps both of them off. We haven't managed to break anything on it yet, but if you're learning to fly, then that is something that might happen. I wouldn't recommend this as a model to try and fly on. It's a bit big and it's a bit heavy. It's going to knock somebody out if it hits somebody on the back of the head. There are smaller indoor quads that I'd recommend trying with first. But if you're the kind of pilot that isn't interested in some of the other stuff that we do on the channel, where we'll sit with soldering irons and programming things, and we'll go into Clean Fly or Libre Pilot and we'll set things up. If you just want to get your model, put it together and go and fly, this is definitely worth a look. Thank you for taking the time to watch that video. There are lots of other videos on the channel and they're carefully ordered into playlists, so you may find that there are other videos on this same subject that you can go and watch. So I would recommend going into the playlist area of Painless 360 YouTube channel and looking around and seeing what there is. You never know what you might find. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, and happy flying.